The Great Hall of Nexus Station was older than most civilizations. Its walls were made of black stone that seemed to drink in light. 47 species had gathered here today, their representatives sitting in a massive circle that stretched across the chamber like a ring of judgment. High Arbiter Kell stood at the center. He was Valar, tall and elegant, with shimmering wings folded against his back and eyes that glowed soft blue. His people had ruled the Galactic Council for 60,000 years. They had seen species rise and fall like waves against a shore. They had never known fear. "We are here to discuss the human problem," Kell announced. His voice echoed through the hall, translated instantly into 47 languages. The representatives stirred. Some nodded. Others watched with careful eyes. Humanity has existed among the stars for only 300 years, Kell continued. A blink, a single breath in the life of the galaxy. Yet in that time, they have spread to over 200 worlds. They breed like insects. They expand without permission. They refuse to bow to council authority. A massive reptilian figure shifted in his seat. This was War Marshal Vorn of the Tharn, commander of the council's military forces. His scales were the color of dried blood, and his teeth were as long as a human finger. "They are weak," he growled. "Young, soft. If they cause trouble, we crush them." "That is precisely what I propose," Kell said smoothly. "We must contain humanity before they become a true threat. History teaches us that young species who grow too fast become dangerous. Better to deal with them now, while they are still manageable." In the shadows of the hall, an ancient being stirred. Ren was Alar, a species known for their ability to touch minds. His body was thin and gray, and his eyes were pure white. He had lived for 4,000 years, and he had touched the thoughts of countless species. "I must speak," Ren said. His voice was like dry leaves in wind. Kell's wings twitched with annoyance. "Speak then, Alar." Ren rose slowly. "I have touched human minds. I have looked into their memories, their dreams, their fears. They are not like other young species. There is something in them, something old, something that burns." Vorn laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "You speak of fire in the minds of soft creatures? They have no claws, no scales, no natural weapons. They are prey animals who learn to build ships." "You do not understand," Ren insisted. "Their entire history is war. They have fought each other for thousands of years. They have survived ice ages, plagues, and disasters that would have ended most species. They carry their trauma in their blood. They have not forgotten how to be dangerous." Kell raised one elegant hand. "Enough. The Alar see shadows in every corner. Humanity is young and weak. This is fact. We will vote." The vote was quick. 44 species voted yes. 3 voted no. The declaration of war against humanity passed with barely a discussion. Kell smiled, his blue eyes bright with satisfaction. "It is done. War Marshal Vorn, you will assemble the fleet. 3,000 ships should be more than enough to end this quickly." Vorn stood, his massive form casting a shadow across the floor. "I will bring you their surrender within one cycle, or I will bring you their ashes." Far across the galaxy, in orbit around Earth, a space station called Black Sky floated in the darkness. It was humanity's military headquarters, a massive structure of metal and glass that watched over the blue planet below. Lieutenant Hannah Lim sat at her station in the intelligence center. She was young, barely 30, with sharp eyes and quick fingers. Her job was to monitor alien communications, searching for anything that might affect humanity. Tonight she found something. Her screens filled with data as she intercepted a transmission from Nexus Station. She decoded it quickly, her heart beating faster with each word. By the time she finished, her hands were shaking. She grabbed her tablet and ran. Admiral Una Park's office was at the top of black sky. The old woman sat behind her desk reading reports on a screen. She was 72 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face lined by decades of hard decisions. She had served in the military for 50 years, rising through the ranks with cold patience. Hana burst through the door. "Admiral! Priority transmission from Nexus Station!" Una looked up slowly. Her eyes were calm, almost bored. "What is it, Lieutenant?" "The Galactic Council," Hana gasped. "They voted. They declared war on humanity." Una took the tablet. She read the declaration slowly, her expression revealing nothing. Hana watched, waiting for shock, for anger, for fear. Instead, Admiral Una Park smiled. It was a small smile, just a slight curve of her lips. But there was something in it that made Hana step back. It was the smile of a hunter who had finally spotted her prey. "At last," Una whispered. She stood and walked to her window. Earth hung below, blue and green and beautiful. Humanity's home. The planet they had crawled out of, reaching for the stars with desperate hands. Una touched a panel on her desk. A hidden screen appeared showing a communication channel that Hana had never seen before. It was marked with a single word, Prometheus. "Admiral?" Hana asked. "What are you doing?" Una typed a code into the channel. 3 words appeared on the screen. "Wake the wolves." She pressed send. Across human space, things began to wake up. In the asteroid belt of distant systems, hidden shipyards powered on for the first time in decades. Thousands of warships, built in secret, and received their activation codes. On colony worlds, hidden weapons platforms rose from underground bunkers. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment opened sealed orders and finally understood their purpose. Hana stared at her admiral. "You knew," she breathed. "You knew this would happen." Una turned to face her. The old woman's eyes were bright, alive with something that might have been joy. "I have known for 40 years, Una said. "The Council was always going to come for us. It was never a question of if, only when." She looked back at Earth, at the ships beginning to move in the darkness. "They think they are declaring war on a young, weak species. They think this will be easy." She smiled again, and this time it reached her eyes. "They have no idea what they have just awakened." 40 years ago, the Commander Una Park was young. She had black hair instead of gray, smooth skin instead of wrinkles, and hope instead of cold patience. She believed that the galaxy could be fair. She believed that if humanity worked hard and showed respect, they would be accepted. She was wrong. The diplomatic ship carried her to Nexus Station for the first time. She walked through those ancient halls with wide eyes, amazed by the size and beauty of the Council's seat of power. She saw species she had only read about. She felt small and young and eager to learn. Then she witnessed the trial. The Korath were a peaceful species. They were small, gentle beings with soft fur and large eyes. They had committed no crime except existing too close to Valar territory. They had expanded to 3 new worlds without asking Council permission. And High Arbiter Kel's father presided over their judgment. Una sat in the observation gallery and watched as the Korath ambassador begged for mercy. His voice shook. His eyes were wet with tears. The Council laughed. "You are young," the old arbiter said, his tone bored. "You do not understand your place. The galaxy has rules. You have broken them." "We will move," the Korath ambassador cried. "We will abandon the worlds. Please, just give us time." "Time is not something we give to insects," the arbiter replied. The sentence was extinction. The Korath homeworld was sterilized. 8 billion lives ended in a single afternoon. The survivors, barely 100,000, were scattered across the galaxy like dust in wind. Una returned to Earth a changed woman. The hope in her eyes had died. In its place was something harder, a colder, more patient. She requested a meeting with Earth's leadership. She stood before presidents and generals and spoke the truth. "The council will come for us," she said. "Not today, not tomorrow, but someday we will grow too large, or speak too loudly, or simply exist in the wrong place at the wrong time. And when that day comes, they will vote to destroy us, just as they destroyed the Korath." The leaders were skeptical. Humanity had good relations with the council. Trade was growing. Peace seemed secure. "Then let me prepare," Yuna asked. "Let me build a shield in secret. If I am wrong, we lose nothing. If I am right, we survive." They agreed. Project Prometheus was born. Yuna spent the next 4 decades building an army that the galaxy would never see coming. Every human colony was designed with hidden bunkers beneath its cities. Every cargo ship had weapons concealed in its hull. Every mining station was actually a weapons platform waiting to be activated. She recruited the best minds humanity had to offer. Dr. Sujin An was a genius in physics, a quiet woman with glasses and messy hair who spent her days solving impossible problems. Yuna gave her a simple task: create weapons the galaxy has never seen. Sujin delivered. The gravity bombs could crush a warship into a ball the size of a fist. The reality anchors could lock a ship in place, unable to move or escape. And the silence protocol, Sujin's masterpiece, could shut down all technology across an entire star system. "This is terrifying," Sujin said when she finished the silence protocol. "One push of a button, and every ship in range becomes a floating coffin." Yuna nodded. "Good. I want them terrified." Ambassador Do-Yun Choi was another piece of the plan. He was a small man with a gentle smile and soft voice. He seemed weak, harmless, easy to ignore. He was perfect. Yuna sent him to Nexus Station as humanity's diplomatic representative. For 30 years, he attended meetings, bowed to council members, and pretended to be afraid. He agreed to unfair trade deals. He accepted insults with a smile. The council saw him as proof that humans knew their place. They never suspected that he was mapping their weaknesses. Every patrol route, every security code, every secret meeting place, Do-Hyun recorded it all and sent it back to Earth through channels the council could never detect. "Oh, they think I am a coward," Do-Hyun reported to Yuna during one of their secret calls. "They speak freely in front of me. They discuss their plans, their fears, their hidden shames. They have so many secrets, Admiral, so many weaknesses." "Keep listening," Yuna told him. "Our day will come." Captain Taiho Kang was the final piece. He was young when Yuna found him, a brilliant tactical mind trapped in a boring patrol assignment. She saw his potential and made him her student. She taught him everything she knew about war, about patience, about the importance of striking at the right moment. "Why do we hide?" Taiho asked her once, frustrated by the secrecy. "We are strong. We should show the galaxy what we can do. Because the moment we show our strength, they will unite against us," Yuna explained. We are one species against 47. We cannot fight them all at once. So we wait. We let them grow comfortable. We let them think we are weak. And when they finally move against us, when they commit their forces and reveal their positions, we strike." "And if they never move against us?" Yuna smiled sadly. "They will. Power cannot stand to share the galaxy with potential rivals. It is not a matter of if, only when." Now, 40 years later, the waiting was over. War Marshal Vorn assembled his fleet in council space. 3,000 warships, each one massive and powerful, armed with weapons that had conquered dozens of species. The Tharn crews boasted about the glory they would win. They had never lost a war. They did not expect to start now. Taiho stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, humanity's flagship, and he watched the long-range sensors tracking the approaching fleet. They were making no effort to hide their approach. They flew in standard formation, broadcasting their position like they were on parade. "They are not even trying to be careful," Taiho observed. Admiral Yuna stood beside him, her hands clasped behind her back. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her uniform was crisp and perfect. She looked at the approaching fleet the way a wolf looks at sheep. "They think we are prey," she said. "They have hunted young species before. It has always been easy. Quick, clean." She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "They have never hunted something that was waiting for them." Taiho looked at his admiral. He had served under her for 20 years, and he had never seen her like this. There was something almost joyful in her expression. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Yuna watched the enemy fleet growing closer on the sensors. 3,000 ships coming to destroy her people, her world, everything she loved. "Let them come close," she said softly. "Let them think they have already won. And when they are deep in our territory, when there is no escape, we will show them what humanity really is." She turned to face the bridge crew. Every officer watched her with steady eyes. They had trained their whole lives for this moment. "Wake all units," Admiral Yuna commanded. "The wolves are hunting tonight." The Council fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system like a storm rolling across the sky. 3,000 warships, each one bristling with weapons, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. War Marshal Vorn stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crushing Tide, watching the human homeworld grow larger on his screens. Earth, a small blue planet with a single moon, home to 8 billion soft, weak creatures who had forgotten their place in the galaxy. "Open a channel," Vorn commanded. "Let them hear their doom." His transmission echoed across the system. "Humans, this is War Marshal Vorn of the Galactic Council. You have been judged and found guilty of crimes against galactic law. You will surrender immediately. Disable your weapons, power down your ships, and prepare to accept Council authority. You have 1 hour to comply. If you refuse, we will reduce your worlds to ash and your species to memory." Vorn waited, expecting panic, expecting pleas for mercy, expecting the terrified silence of prey animals facing a predator. Instead, a calm voice answered. It was a woman, her tone almost bored. "This is Admiral Yuna Park of the United Earth Defense Fleet. You are trespassing in human space. Leave now or die." Vorn blinked his massive reptilian eyes. Then he laughed, a deep rumbling sound that shook his bridge. "Brave words from a dead species," he growled. "All ships, attack formation, destroy everything." The Council fleet surged forward. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Captain Taiho Kong watched the enemy approach on his tactical display. The red dots of Council ships moved steadily toward the center of the system, toward Earth. "They are in the outer zone," he reported. Admiral Yuna stood motionless, watching. "Wait. They are passing the asteroid belt. Wait. They are entering the inner system." Yuna smiled. "Now." She pressed a single button on her command console. Across the Sol system, the trap sprang shut. From the asteroid belt, hidden doors opened in rocks that had seemed dead and empty. 500 human warships emerged from their hiding places, engines burning bright as they moved into attack position. These were not the small patrol vessels the Council had seen before. These were predators, built in secret shipyards, armed with weapons that had never been used in battle. From Europa's ice, weapons platforms rose on massive pillars. They had been buried beneath the frozen surface for decades, waiting for this moment. Their targeting systems locked onto the Council fleet, and their guns began to charge. From underground bases on Mars, fighter wings launched in waves so thick they darkened the stars. Thousands of small ships, fast and deadly, piloted by men and women who had trained their entire lives for this single battle. Vorn stared at his sensors in disbelief. "Where did they come from? Our intelligence said they had only 200 combat ships." "Sir," his tactical officer stammered, "we are detecting over 800 warships. And the weapons platforms, the fighters, we are completely surrounded." Impossible, Vorn snarled. They are young. They are weak. How can they— His words died in his throat as Dr. Sujin An, sitting in a control room deep beneath Earth's surface, pressed the button that activated the silence protocol. The effect was instant and absolute. Every council ship lost power at the same moment. What engines died. Weapons went offline. Shields collapsed. Navigation systems turned to static. 3,000 warships became 3,000 floating coffins, drifting helplessly in the darkness of space. Vorn felt his flagship shudder as the lights went out. Emergency backups tried to activate, but they died too. The silence protocol did not just shut down main systems. It killed everything. "What is happening?" Vorn roared into the darkness. No one answered. His crew was as blind and helpless as he was. Admiral Yuna's voice filled the silent bridge. Broadcast through a system the silence protocol did not affect. "You wanted war with humanity. Now you have it." The human fleet moved in. It was not a battle. A battle requires two sides capable of fighting. This was an execution. The human warships positioned themselves around the helpless council vessels and opened fire. Gravity bombs crushed destroyers into twisted metal. Plasma cannons tore through hulls that had no shields to protect them. Missiles struck engines that could not maneuver to avoid them. Taiho commanded the attack from the eternal dawn. His voice was calm as he directed his forces. "Third Wing, target the carrier group on the left flank. Fifth Wing, finish off those cruisers. No ship escapes." Vorn watched through the windows of his dead bridge as his fleet died around him. Explosions lit the darkness like terrible flowers blooming and fading. Ships that had conquered worlds broke apart without firing a single shot. "How?" he whispered. "How could they do this?" The crushing tide was one of the last ships to fall. Human Marines boarded it, now cutting through the hull with plasma torches. They moved through the corridors in perfect formation, their weapons steady, their faces hidden behind combat helmets. Vorn met them on the bridge. He tried to fight, swinging his massive claws at the first human he saw. A single shot from a plasma rifle put him on the ground. "Take him alive," a voice commanded. "The Admiral wants to speak with him." Of 3,000 council ships, only 12 escaped. They fled the system at maximum speed, carrying word of the disaster back to the Council. Hours later, Vorn was led through the corridors of Black Sky Station in chains. Human soldiers lined the walls, watching him pass. They were smaller than him, weaker than him, lacking claws or scales or natural weapons. But their eyes held no fear. They looked at him the way predators look at prey. And Admiral Yuna waited for him in her office. She sat behind her desk, her hands folded, her expression calm. She was old and small and soft, everything the Tharn despised. And yet, as Vorn stood before her, he felt something he had never felt in 300 years of war. He felt afraid. "What are you?" he demanded, his voice rough with shock and rage. "Your species is young. You should not have weapons like that. You should not have known we were coming. You should not have been prepared." Yuna stood slowly. She walked around her desk and looked up at the massive reptilian warrior. She was barely half his height. She weighed less than one of his arms. "We are what you made us," she said softly. "For 300 years we watched the Council destroy species after species. We watched you laugh as you burned worlds. We watched, and we learned, and we prepared." She stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. "You see us as prey because we are soft, because we have no claws, no scales, no natural armor. But you forgot something, War Marshal. You forgot that prey animals do not build starships. Prey animals do not split atoms. Prey animals do not survive ice ages and plagues and world wars." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "We are the species that learned to fear the dark, and then we became the thing the darkness fears." Vorn stared at her, this tiny old woman who had just destroyed the greatest fleet in galactic history. "The Council will send more ships," he said. "They will never stop." Yuna smiled, and it was the smile of a wolf baring its teeth. "Good," she said. "Let them come. We have been waiting a very long time for this." She turned and walked back to her desk, leaving Vorn in chains, surrounded by the soldiers of a species that had just announced itself to the galaxy. The wolves had tasted blood, and they were still hungry. The news of the disaster spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. 3,000 ships destroyed in a single battle. War Marshal Vorn captured. The mighty Tharn fleet reduced to ashes by a species that should have been easy prey. High Arbiter Kell refused to believe it. "Lies," he declared in the council chambers. His wings trembled with rage. "Human propaganda. The Tharn have never lost a battle. This is impossible." "The survivors have returned," one of his advisors said carefully. 12 ships out of 3,000. Their captains are damaged. They speak of weapons that turned off our technology, of ambushes we never saw coming, of humans who fought without fear or mercy. Kell slammed his fist against his throne. "Then we will send more ships, 10,000, 20,000. We will crush them with numbers alone." Ren, the ancient Alar, watched from his seat in the shadows. His white eyes were sad. "I warned you," he said quietly. "I looked into their minds and saw what they carry. Generations of war, oceans of blood. They have been fighting since before they had words to describe it. You have awakened something that does not know how to stop." "Silence," Kell screamed. "Prepare the Grand Fleet. Every ship we have, we will end this." But while the council prepared, humanity did not wait. Admiral Yuna stood before the Command Council of the United Earth Defense Fleet. A massive star map glowed behind her, showing the territories of the Galactic Council. "The Council will gather a new fleet," she said, "larger than the last, but it will take time. Time we will not waste." She pointed to a cluster of systems near the edge of Council space. "These are the enslaved worlds, species the Council has conquered and oppressed for centuries. The Tharn use them as labor. The Valar tax them until they starve." Her finger moved across the map. "We are going to free them." General Minho Bayek leaned forward. He was a large man with a scarred face and hands that had seen combat on a dozen worlds. "Liberation campaigns? That will spread our forces thin." "It will spread our message," Yuna replied. "The Council rules through fear. We will show the galaxy that there is another way. That someone will stand up to them." She looked at her officers. "And every species we free becomes a potential ally. An army that fights alone will eventually fall. An army that fights alongside friends will win." Captain Taiho Kang nodded slowly. "Where do we start?" Yuna's finger stopped on a small moon circled in red. "Here. Korath refugees. The survivors of the species the Council destroyed 40 years ago. 100,000 of them, hidden on a forgotten rock at the edge of nowhere." She turned to face her officers. "This is personal." The liberation campaign began 3 days later. General Minho Bayek led ground forces to the first enslaved world, a planet called Tharn 7, where conquered species worked in mines under brutal conditions. His soldiers dropped from orbit in assault pods, landing in the middle of the main labor camp. The Tharn guards expected nothing. They had grown lazy and cruel, used to beating workers who could not fight back. They were not prepared for human marines in combat armor, moving through the camp with terrible precision. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the guards were dead or captured, and the workers stood blinking in the light, unable to believe what they were seeing. Minho removed his helmet and looked at the freed prisoners. They were thin and scarred, their eyes hollow from years of suffering. "You are free," he said simply. "Anyone who wants to fight the Council, we will train you. Anyone who wants to go home, we will take you there. You are not slaves anymore." Some of them cried. Some of them screamed. Some of them knelt on the ground and refused to move. too broken to understand what freedom meant. Minho's medics moved through the crowd, treating wounds, distributing food, speaking soft words of comfort. This was not just war. This was healing. Captain Tai-ho led the fleet in strikes against Council shipyards. Ambassador Do-hyun's 30 years of intelligence work proved invaluable. He knew every patrol route, every security weakness, every hidden supply depot. "The main shipyard is protected by a minefield," Do-hyun reported, his gentle voice carrying across the command channel. "But the mines are controlled from a station on the dark side of the seventh moon. Destroy the station, and the minefield goes blind." Tai-ho smiled. "Thank you, Ambassador. Your work has been remarkable." "I spent 30 years bowing to them," Do-hyun said, and there was steel beneath his gentle tone. "Why smiling while they insulted my species, agreeing while they planned our destruction? It is good to finally show them who I really am." The shipyard fell. Hundreds of Council ships, still under construction, were destroyed before they could ever threaten humanity. And then finally, the human fleet reached the Korath moon. Admiral Yuna went herself. She walked through the underground tunnels where the survivors had hidden for 40 years. They were small and fragile, their soft fur gray with age, their large eyes filled with old pain. An elder approached her. He was ancient, barely able to walk, supported by 2 younger Korath. "Are you real?" he asked, his voice a whisper. "We have dreamed of rescue for so long. We thought we were forgotten." Yuna knelt before him, bringing herself to his level. "You are not forgotten. I watched your people die 40 years ago. I swore that day that I would make the Council pay." She took his frail hand in hers. "I am sorry it took so long." The elder wept. Around them, other Korath began to cry, their soft voices filling the tunnels with sound that was part grief and part joy. Human medics moved through the refugees, treating illnesses that had gone untreated for decades. Human engineers began repairing life support systems that were held together by hope and desperation. Yuna stayed for 3 days, speaking with survivors, learning their stories, promising that the Council would answer for what it had done. Word of the liberation spread. Other oppressed species began to reach out to humanity in secret. They offered information, resources, volunteers. The army of one species began to grow into something larger. And then the Council's grand fleet arrived. 10,000 warships gathered from every corner of Council space. High Arbiter Kell had emptied his reserves, called in every favor, demanded every ship. This was the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. They found the human fleet waiting for them at the edge of a star system called the Reach. But the humans were not alone. Behind the eternal dawn flew ships from 12 species that had joined humanity's cause. They were small, their ships old and patched, but they had come to fight. The Korath survivors had armed their refugee transports. The freed slaves from Tharn 7 had seized their captors' vessels and learned to fly them. Tai-ho looked at the mixed fleet on his sensors. "This is not just our war anymore." Beside him, Admiral Yuna nodded. "No, this is the galaxy waking up. This is every species that ever suffered under the Council finally having a chance to fight back." She opened a channel to the Allied fleet, her voice carried across the darkness of space. "Today we face the full might of the Council. They are many, they are powerful, they expect us to be afraid." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was iron. "Show them what free people can do." The battle began. It was fierce and long and brutal. The Council had numbers. Humanity had surprise and technology and the desperate courage of those fighting for their freedom. When it was over, the Council fleet was broken, not destroyed entirely, but shattered, its survivors fleeing back to Nexus Station with word of another impossible defeat. Ren watched the reports come in. He was not surprised. He had seen what lived in human minds. He only wondered if the galaxy was ready for what came next. The human fleet arrived at Nexus Station on a quiet day. There was no battle. There were no weapons fire, no explosions, no screaming sirens. The ancient station floated in the darkness of space, surrounded by the broken remains of what had once been the greatest military power in the galaxy. High Arbiter Kell had no more fleets to send. His allies had abandoned him. Species that had bowed to the Council for thousands of years were now in open revolt. The empire that had seemed eternal was crumbling like sand in wind. Admiral Una Park stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn as the station grew larger in the view screen. She was still now, her hands folded behind her back, her gray hair catching the light from the control panels. 40 years. 40 years of preparation, of patience, of sleepless nights and hard choices. 40 years of building an army in the shadows while the galaxy thought humanity was weak. And now, here she was, at the gates of the empire that had threatened to destroy her people. "No defensive fire," Captain Tejo reported. "Their weapons are powered down. I think they are surrendering." Una nodded slowly. "Open a channel to the station." The communication screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the council chambers. High Arbiter Kell stood at the center, his wings hanging limp, his blue eyes dull with defeat. Around him, the remaining council representatives sat in silence. Some looked terrified, some looked resigned. A few, Una noticed, looked almost relieved. "Admiral Park," Kell said. His voice was empty, then stripped of the arrogance that had defined him. "You have won. The Council submits to your demands." "I am not here to make demands," Una replied. "I am here to end an age of tyranny. I will dock at the station. You will receive me in the council chambers. We will discuss the future of this galaxy." Kell opened his mouth as if to argue, then closed it again. He had no leverage left, no threats to make, no armies to send. "Very well," he said quietly. "We await your arrival." 1 hour later, Admiral Una Park walked into the council chambers. She had been here before, 40 years ago, a young commander full of hope. She had watched from the observation gallery as the Korath begged for mercy and received only death. She had walked out of this room a changed woman, her hope burned away, replaced by cold determination. And now she walked into the same chamber as a conqueror. But she did not feel like a conqueror. She felt tired and old, and ready for this to finally end. The council representatives watched her approach. Some of them were the same beings who had voted for humanity's destruction. Some were new, replacing those who had died in the war or fled before its end. Kell stood at the center of the floor, exactly where his father had stood when he sentenced the Korath to extinction. "Admiral," he said, his voice formal and cold, "you have destroyed our fleets, freed our slaves, and turned our allies against us. What more do you want? Our complete annihilation." Una stopped before him. She was smaller than any being in the room, old, human, everything the council had taught its citizens to dismiss. And yet every eye was fixed on her, or waiting for her words. "I want peace," she said. Kell blinked. "Peace? I did not fight this war to replace one empire with another." Una reached into her uniform and pulled out a small data pad. She held it up so the entire chamber could see. "This is the Covenant of Sol, a new charter for the galaxy." She pressed a button, and the document projected into the air above her. The representatives leaned forward to read. "Equal representation for all species," Una said, walking slowly around the chamber. "No more votes weighted by age or power. A Korath colony will have the same voice as the Valar homeworld." She gestured to another section. "Protection for the weak. No more extinctions voted in an afternoon. and any military action against a species must be approved by a majority that includes representatives of the targeted species region. Another section lit up. Freedom of movement, freedom of trade, freedom of speech, the rights that the Council denied to so many for so long. She turned to face Kell directly. And accountability for the past. Those who ordered atrocities will face justice. Those who followed orders will be offered amnesty if they cooperate with truth commissions. Kell stared at the document. His wings twitched, a sign of stress among the Valar. You could destroy us, he said slowly. You have the power. Why show mercy? Yuna was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear. Because I have spent 40 years preparing for war. I have watched friends die. And I have ordered attacks that killed millions. I have done terrible things in the name of survival. She looked at her hands, the hands that had signed so many orders. I do not want my legacy to be destruction. I want to build something better. She stepped closer to Kell. I want my granddaughter to grow up in a galaxy where no one has to fear extinction because they expanded too far or spoke too loudly. I want the Korath survivors to rebuild their civilization without looking over their shoulders. I want every species that suffered under Council rule to know that their children will never suffer the same way. Her eyes met Kell's. I am giving you a choice, High Arbiter. Sign this covenant and help build a new galaxy, or refuse and watch everything you know crumble into dust. Kell looked at the document. He looked at his fellow council members, who watched with expressions ranging from horror to hope. He looked at the human admiral who had destroyed his empire with patience and precision. He reached for the signing pad. I sign, he said quietly, not because I believe in your vision, but because I have no other choice. That is enough for now, Yuna replied. Belief can come later. One by one, the other representatives signed. Some did it quickly, eager to move past the old order. Some hesitated, struggling with pride or fear. But in the end, all of them signed. The Galactic Council was dead. The Covenant of Sol was born. Hours later, Yuna stood alone on the observation deck of Nexus Station. Through the massive windows, she could see ships from 100 worlds passing by. Some bore the scars of recent battle. Others were civilian vessels, carrying diplomats and merchants and ordinary citizens trying to understand what came next. She heard footsteps behind her. Taiho joined her at the window. You spent your whole life preparing for this, he said. Now that it is over, what comes next? Yuna considered the question. For 40 years, war had been her purpose. Every decision, every sacrifice, every moment of her life had been aimed at this single goal. Now, the goal was achieved. The enemy was defeated. The threat was ended. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt empty, a weapon without a target. Now, she said slowly, we build something worth protecting. She turned away from the window and saw Lieutenant Hannah Lim approaching. The young woman was older now, her face marked by the stress of years of conflict. She carried a tablet in her hands. Admiral, Hannah said, the new council is requesting your presence. They want to discuss reconstruction efforts. Yuna smiled faintly. They move quickly. They are afraid you will leave, Hannah said honestly. They know the treaty only holds if you enforce it. Without humanity, the old powers might try to return. Yuna looked out at the galaxy one more time. So many stars, so many worlds, so many species, each with their own hopes and fears and dreams. She had spent 40 years learning how to destroy. Now she would have to learn how to build. At last, she said softly. Taiho looked at her. Admiral? Yuna straightened her uniform. The warrior would have to become something new, a diplomat, a builder, a guardian of peace instead of an instrument of war. At last, she repeated. But in this time the words carried a different weight. Not the anticipation of battle that she had felt when the war began. This was something gentler, something like hope. She walked toward the door, toward the future, leaving the observation deck empty behind her. Outside the window, the galaxy turned slowly in the endless dark. 100 worlds, 1,000 species, 1,000,000,000,000 lives all moving forward into an uncertain future. The wolves had won their war. Now they would learn to be shepherds. And somewhere, in the ruins of the old order, a new galaxy was beginning to be born.